Hello and welcome to the Comedy Slab, where we put a comedy quite simply on the slab to dissect it and see what sort of stars we want to give it out of 5. And by we, I mean me, Adrian Lacey in Kent, and he, Shane O'Connor, come in the West Midlands. How you doing?
I'm all right. I feel like I should apologise that I haven't got anybody singing on the floor above me, but I mean, I could try and arrange it if you have got time to get.
Well, it might not sync up. What he's referring to is something I don't think will be too prominent once we sort of sort it out in the wash. But my very talented landlord, who is connected with no less a luminary than the wonderful Chris Difford of Squeeze fame, my landlord is working on his own music at the moment. And even though we're a floor apart, because he can belt out a good tune, you may get the odd note or two. I'm just worried that he's going to sue me for copyright or something dubious.
If we start to hear it, we'll just sing over it.
Can I just pick up from something from last week? Just to explain very quickly, if you're brand new to the show, it's lovely to have you along. Do subscribe, which you can do via Spreaker, or we're also on YouTube. Obviously, you found us, wherever it is you're listening to us. But we're going to dissect a show called Party. It's a BBC Radio 4 show. Shane brought it to my attention. I'm very much looking forward to dissecting that in just a mo. But I meant to pick up, last week we were working on Ideals, Series 2, Episode 1. This is a Johnny Vegas vehicle. He's a drug dealer, and the clientele, shall we say, which is giving them possibly a little too much status, they come to him in his not very impressive flat. What I failed to mention last week was how wonderful the character Judith is. She's a very, very nervous character, beautifully played by Joanna Neary, but so good. I can't believe when we stopped recording, it was one of those, I've got to kick myself now, because I'd made notes and she had featured in the notes. So sorry, Joanna. It was just an amazing character. Obviously well written, well directed, all of that, but beautifully played. That you just believed her nervous tics were utterly convincing. It was real. She just moved into, if not next door, then nearly next door to Moles, played by Johnny Vegas. Did you not think she's a marvellous character?
Yeah, and also, talking about character development in Ideal, which we did last week, her character is one that develops exponentially, shall we say. I don't want to give anything away, but yeah, that is like her character, the way it's written and the way it develops is like a masterclass in character development. So
right, she's certainly
one to watch as you go through. If you watch the rest of the series, as I have, then shocking, I think is the way to shocking.
Wow, gosh,
shocking. I've said too much already. Shh.
Oh, yes. That's an REM song, isn't it? Oh, no, I've said too much.
Yeah.
Losing my religion. Anyway, before we lose our religion and lose our audience, more to the point, let's put Party on the Slab. Now, this is slightly different because I will confess, as I did last week, or remind you of my confession, that I have sinned. No, I got the inspiration for slabbing this show entirely from you, Shane, because you introduced me to a show. Somehow I entirely missed it. This episode, so it's episode 4 of series 1. I've also got another confession, which is it's far more readily available for a longer period of time than I thought. I don't know if I was looking at the wrong series. That is an improvement,
great, yeah.
So according to my BBC Signs app, which can be downloaded certainly in the UK free of charge, the show is available for over a year. So,
wow.
I mean, don't take it for granted. I think you should listen sooner rather than later, but you don't have to panic, as I was sort of mildly panicking last week. So, in some senses, you're better equipped to talk about the show. But our tradition, of course, as you'll know, Shane, is to for the person who suggested the show to ask the personee, the suggestee, the listenee. No, that's not right. Anyway, help me out here. Anyway, to ask the other person what they thought of it. But I already know, and the audience, if they were listening last week, already knows you like the show. So
I thought of a good headline as well. So
yeah, well, go for it. Let's have a headline.
My headline would be, "It's my party, and I'll laugh if I want to."
Oh, very nice. But I don't think there's any choices there. You just have to laugh.
The problem that I have, if you can class it as a problem, you're absolutely right. You bang on the button. I love it. I mean, I think it just really hit a nerve with me. I don't know what it is. I mean, we'll talk about some of the things that make it as great as I think it is. But I'm a real Tom Basden fanboy. For somebody so young, I mean, he's written books, plays, he's written sketches, he's written with Mark Watson, he's written for Armstrong and Miller, he's written episodes of Peep Show, he's written episodes of Fresh Meat, he's written Plebs for ITV.
He must be due a day off by now.
Well, I look at the body of work that he's done so far, and I think, how on earth has he had? And obviously, he's a graduate from, I don't know if it's Oxford or Cambridge, I can't remember. But so no slouch either in the educational department. But you just kind of think, for such a tender age, he has done such amazing things and worked with such amazing people. So I do kind of find myself, whatever Tom Basden has written, I kind of think it'll be all right by me. You know what I mean?
Well, it most certainly is by me. Obviously, I wouldn't have suggested it if I didn't believe in it. I'm occasionally masochistic, but not that masochistic.
And we've seen him in a Slab capacity, haven't we? Because he was the dentist in Quacks.
Oh, yes, indeed. Yes, that was an interesting one. So he can slot himself into someone else's show. I mean, you have to, obviously, as an actor, but not every actor can write by any stretch. I mean, it is a minority, but then to have someone who can be an all-rounder like that, and I wouldn't bet against an Oscar down the line or a Golden Globe or a
BAFTA or something. Yeah, I would.
It'd be called Tom BAFTA before we know it, won't it?
Yeah. Basden's BAFTAs.
So that'll be a long-running series. So yes, conspicuous talent, but then of course the same could be said of Tim Key, Johnny Sweet, Anna Crilly, Katie Wicks and Nick Mohammed, all of whom appear in this particular episode. Nick would only be, I guess, in this one or occasional ones. He's not part of the ensemble because it is an ensemble of 5 normally.
Yeah. Nick Mohammed is my comedy enigma for this decade. I don't know why Nick Mohammed hasn't done more than he's done. And he had a show on Radio 4, I think, Nick Mohammed in Pieces, a radio show, and I thought it was really funny, and then nothing. I don't know what it is. I don't know why he hasn't done more. He's the underachiever in this particular barrel of laughs, I got to say, and I don't know why that is, because he doesn't deserve to have not achieved the status that the rest of the cast have. Weird.
I was very briefly looking him up and I saw, I only half read it because, as ever, I was up against the clock, which is shorthand for me not starting research early enough.
Hey, can I just tell you, everyone, while you're listening to this, he was eating crisps. That's why. Last week it was the quinoa.
You wouldn't let it lie.
And I have to say, he's the only man I know. This is how posh he is. I was just saying to my wife just before we started recording this, he was eating crisps out of a bowl. Now, to me, that's the kind of man who gets out of the bath to have a wee. I mean, that's just overly posh, isn't it, really? But there you are.
The P is silent, as in bath, as my dad was fond of saying. And if you knew my dad, that's about as risque as his humour ever got.
That's quite good, though. I like it.
It's not bad, is it? It's not bad.
Good effort.
Anyway, there was, when I'm trying to do it as I speak, but of course, being male, I can't multitask that successfully. I have to say, I admired you had a magician's assistant, otherwise known as your wife, in the back of shot, because we look at each other on Skype, not because we necessarily like the view, but supposedly it helps with timing, except this week, of all weeks, you've hidden behind the microphone. So I can't see when you're going to speak. Oh, there he is. It's a shame you can't see this, dear listener, but frankly, you're not missing that much.
That's my Gene Simmons impression.
Oh, right. Have I got to explain now? That was a bit visual. He was sticking his tongue out.
I did that with the doctors in the week, and she said, I wouldn't put that back in your mouth. Yeah, go on, sorry.
Well, you don't know where it's been. The trouble is, you do know where it's been.
I do, but that's a good enough reason not to put it back.
Please. Already, we're getting very close to having to have an E certificate. Just looking at a tweet by Nick Mohammed to finish this, and then we've got to go to you for a certain quote that we discussed. He's on the drink, ladies and gentlemen. Ribena, if I'm not greatly mistaken.
Well, it's purple. But,
it's purple, yeah.
Other brands are available.
Right. This is the latest tweet from... Oh, it's a pinned tweet, so actually it dates from last month, but it's fairly recent.
Yeah.
He's working with David Schwimmer. Now, I don't count that as underachieving necessarily, on a new comedy series about intelligence. This is for Sky One.
Right.
And then he goes on to say, let's hope GCHQ and the equivalent in the States never find out. Oh, wait. So, as a comedian, can't resist a little gag, even as he talks about his... growing CV. So who knows? That could go somewhere. You never know with showbiz.
Yeah, and I've got to say, when I say underachiever, I just mean on British TV. I think we should see, British radio, we should see more of him. And it's a shame that we haven't, because I think he's another huge talent. Big shout out to Sky One as well for all the comedy that they're commissioning. I think they're doing a fabulous job. They really are. They're doing some great stuff.
I have to say, while we're on that, I'm meant to be being more concise because we're trying to get on our 3 audio clips. But there was a time when Sky One comedy, I'm being one of those industry bores. I get the Trade Mag broadcast, and they include, this shows how long ago it was, they included a VHS tape of a Sky One show.
A wax cylinder.
Yeah, virtually. Way back in the last century, I think it was. And I don't know if I should mention any actors associated with it, but basically, you can do all the promotion you like, but in those days, it was not a byword for quality comedy. I think they felt, this is the impression I got, and I'm glad that you think, in effect, I'm wrong now. I want to be wrong. But I got the impression they thought, oh, well, the BBC's got a comedy department. We've got more money. We've got Murdoch behind us. Let's buy a comedy department. And we can just buy our way into the, producing good stuff. It doesn't work like that, does it?
Do you know what I think the difference is between Sky and the BBC? Is that I think that Sky, or whoever is commissioning them, understands comedy from what I've seen. Wasn't Hang Ups a Sky production? I think that was on Sky.
It was, yes, which we slabbed in the early days. I believe.
That's it, yeah, with Stephen Mangan.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, I kind of think it's either on my wavelength or it's good comedy, who knows, but it resonates with me. And I kind of think that their commissioning understands comedy. Whoever is commissioning stuff understands what's funny. And I think that's whereas with BBC and with ITV, at times you think, do you really understand? Is this the best that you could commission? You know what I mean? It's that kind of difference, I think. Anyway, why don't we bang into a clip? Because the clips that you've chosen, the first one is kind of right at the start of the episode, more or less.
That was deliberate because it helps with the setup.
Sets the scene, doesn't it? Yeah.
Dear listener, if you haven't heard this show before, so essentially it's this group of 5 people, earnest young things, trying to set up a political party. We'll get on a bit later because I think it's actually got quite a deep undertow, but it's very funny whether or not you want to dig deep. So I deliberately chose something towards the beginning of the show because in this episode, I need to say no more than they're steeling themselves for a taste of political hardball.
Right, everyone ready? Ty? Yes, fine. I think it's a waste of time.
Well, you've been outvoted.
Yes, exactly. So
all we ever do is sit around and discuss stuff and go around in circles. This is direct action. This is exactly what we need to launch our party. We need to let people know that we're a new political party and we're bloody furious.
Yes, quite, Mel. This is a profile raiser, Si. This is sticking it to the man. Right, here he comes, loud as pot. What do we want?
Stop the war in Afghanistan!
When do we want it?
Now!
It's safe to do so!
We've changed it from now, Duncan.
Oh, right. Sorry, why is that, Mel?
It's unrealistic. You can't just stop a war straight away. You sort of need a warm down.
Really?
Yeah, sort of like injury time, Duncan.
Oh, right. And do you think that person heard us?
Hard to say, Dunky. Not sure how far the chant's travelling.
Maybe we should get out of the car.
I just love that. I mean, that is such a radio joke, isn't it? Maybe we should get out of the car.
You couldn't get away with that on telly, could you?
No, but I mean, it's the characters. If you start off with a bunch of characters, you describe them perfectly, 5 earnest young people. But they've all got their own little, and I made some notes just ahead of this to kind of highlight what I mean. But There's Jared, of course, who's the leader, but very vain, very insecure, very unworldly. I love the way he calls it. He always says, if pos. Everything's if pos. and if not pos, then we'll do something else.
Yeah.
Simon, who's played by Tom Basden, is the chief advisor. He's always distracted, he's always bored, he's always impatient, always thinks he can do it better. Phoebe, played by Katie Wicks, looks after PR and hair for Jared, which I just love it. She's really quite shallow and little bit slow, isn't she? She's not the fastest out the gates.
Yeah.
Mel, who's played by Anna Crilly, is the campaign manager. She's like a sharp activist, feminist. She's the right on one of the group. And then poor old Duncan, who was the one. When do we want it now? And they changed it and told
He missed
Duncan.
the meeting.
I can't remember when it is. I think it's in episode 1 or 2, but it becomes clear that Duncan is only there because he turned up because he thought they were having a party. He saw an advert for their group. He thought they were having a party and he thought there would be cake. And that's how he ended up. So they said, well, and then they found out that his dad had got a printing company.
Right.
Jared did, and so they made him the communications czar because he got access to
That sounds horribly like some rock and roll bands I know.
Exactly.
Amateurs.
Well, Bill Wyman. I remember Bill Wyman telling me. I said, "Where did you get into the Stones?" He said, "I only got in." He said, "Because I had fags, I had my own bass, I was anyone with an amp, and I used to buy them fish and chips."
How to win your way into the affections of a long-running rock
Exactly,
group.
yeah. So you got those five. You know what I mean? They're clearly drawn, clearly defined. You instantly know what kind of personalities these guys are, and then it kind of almost writes itself. I mean, I'm doing them an injustice because it doesn't write itself, but you kind of think
it feels like it's written itself.
Yeah, with the battle lines drawn, you know where it's going to go, don't you? Really, but yeah, I just love the way that Duncan is the one that's always out of sync with everybody. Just love it. Yeah. The other thing as well, it's always set in one location. I know this was in a car, but they're normally in the shed.
Right.
Which Jared insists on calling a summer house. It's a summer house. If anyone says it's a shed, it's a summer house, Phoebe. But that kind of claustrophobic setting provides for its own dynamic, doesn't it? Don't you think?
Yes. I was going to be the soundboard that I am for a while about... Yeah,
Sound
I know.
effects.
Shocking. No, not so much that, but it doesn't sound like they're in a car. But of course, if it had done, it would have ruined the gag about let's get out the car.
Yeah.
And actually, I listened first on phone, and then I listened on decent cans. Still waiting for my settled permanent home and to have my loudspeakers that will break. To quote. Hitchhiker's Guide, they'll break strategic arms limitation treaties like that rock group did. No, it won't be that bad. But anyway, in the meantime, so when I listen on cans, I mean, there's good traffic noise, and again, being the bore, it is treated in such a way that it does sound like you're in a car. It's got that boomy effect when a car passes them. So yes, enough about that. So it's rare for them.
I do think of that as well. It's like I remember years ago, I wrote some stuff with a mate, and then we got some people to record it. And some of this, he was set in a hotel, imaginatively, and some of the stuff took place in the kitchen, and we just used to have a fridge sound effect that used to run in the background, really low level. And
that's very effective.
And I always thought, because you don't even notice, you don't go, oh, that's a fridge humming. You don't even notice that, because it's something you just filter out, don't you, really? I think, like you say, a little bit more, but I don't know, maybe it's just us because we're sad gits, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say speak for yourself, but no, you're speaking for both of us, obviously. Sorry.
You're a sad git.
I'm going to do another, when I was in the war... except for me, it's when I was on EastEnders.
When I was in EastEnders.
You claim not to remember EastEnders, and then you come out with complete clarity, references to characters.
I remember EastEnders. I don't watch it anymore.
Okay. Do you remember Carol Jackson and the Jackson 5? No, whatever it was. Jackson 4, I think it was. Anyway, they used to have scenes in their kitchen, and I vividly remember laying on... BBC sound effect, ECD 95, track 13, 10 minutes duration. Not that we needed all of that because the scenes were only a minute and a half, but I put this fridge on and it made all the difference. Very low level. And then, of course, being a fridge, it cuts out and then it comes back in again.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. These things are more powerful in some ways when they're subtler and they're going in subconsciously.
Yeah.
And it's all realism. Because, of course, we couldn't have the fridge on for the reasons we talked about last week with music, because the fridge would go on and off and on and off when you're doing take 3 and then you intercut take 2 and pick up a bit from take 12. So that wouldn't work.
I get the impression with this they record it as in front of an audience as a like real time, don't they? I would have thought.
I'm imagining so. Yeah, I'm assuming. Yeah.
This was a play originally. This came out of Edinburgh, didn't it?
Did it? Right. No, again, you know more than I do on that.
Yeah.
Was it a full-length play, one long play, rather than lots of equivalents of half-hour essipodes? Do you know?
I don't know, actually. I'm not. That's a good question. I'm not really sure. I do know that it was this cast that did it.
Right.
Which is quite unusual, isn't it? Because they'll go to Edinburgh and they'll do something and try it out.
Yeah.
And then come back and then tweak it and change it and turn it and rewrite it and take bits out and put bits in. And normally along the way, they'll recast it as well at certain points, won't they? Or people will drop out with other commitments and it will change. I don't know. But yeah, so it's quite unusual in that sense.
Maybe that's part of the brilliance of it, because they actually own it, don't they, having been rooted in it. But, I mean, any decent actor can come in and pick up where someone else left off, but yeah, I prefer to think just as you want the original lineup of your favourite pop group, don't you? Rather than some stand-ins.
Well, you see, I see these as they're a whole strata, the whole generation of comedians. They all kind of work, with each other. Matthew Bainton is another one I think who's connected with them. The Demetrius, Natasha and Jamie, who were in Stathlet's Flats, they're also moving in the same circles. If you look, they've kind of worked with each other. Right. So they're kind of, you're right, they kind of all know each other, I think, don't they, as well? They're of the same generation, of the same ilk, and they kind of all work together in that sense. Yeah.
Should we go to clip number 2? Now, this will need a bit of setting up, and I'm not very strong. I think I've got to give this away, otherwise it won't make an awful lot of sense. I'm not strong on Twilight. Are you familiar with that?
No, not really. My niece used to be mad keen on. I think it was like it was like Harry Potter isn't it, with the youngsters. I think it was like it was the thing. In fact, probably when this went to air, it was probably the thing.
Well, this is 2010, isn't it? I see. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, essentially, they've written slogans. It's the Katie Wicks character, isn't it? Phoebe, who's written slogans on what turns out to be a Twilight pillowcase. So the joke is, I suppose, she was a fan as a child, perhaps, or it's even funnier, she's grown up and she still likes this show. And I think it's not stealing anything from the clip we'll hear that she was only able to write on the lighter coloured parts of the pillowcase, which turned out to be the face of a couple of the actors. I didn't recognise the name Richard Pattinson, was it? Or
Robert Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson. Yeah. So anyway...
I like the bit where they were saying, like, because bearing in mind she said it's a pillowcase, and then they're going, unfurl it. Are you going to open it up, unfurl it? Because that's it, because it's a pillowcase.
It doesn't unfurl.
Unfurling to do, is that's it. It was quite cool.
Anyway, do you want to set this up otherwise? Who joins them at this point?
Well, yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, with 5 people in a, what are they, in a 2CV, isn't it? I think even the
very
car
small
is
car,
there.
yeah.
That's like a comedy car, isn't it? I mean, you don't even have to, you just mentioned 2CV and people will titter, won't they, really, I suppose. But they're in a 2CV, 5 of them, in the rain, so the windows are steaming up. And outside a council building, they keep shouting things out of it. And, of course, they're going to attract attention, aren't they? They're going to arouse suspicions in other people. And so somebody calls the police, and as we mentioned, Nick Mohammed comes along, he's playing the copper, and he comes along to find out exactly what's going on.
Hello, officer.
Hello, madam.
Sir, it's,
Really?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Sorry.
It's alright, people sometimes mistake me for a woman because I'm very attractive.
Right. All alright?
Yeah, fine, thanks, officer.
I've had a couple of calls from people in the council office there who are worried about what you're doing in here.
I bet they are.
Sorry?
Nothing. She didn't say anything.
couple of them thought that it might be something, sexual.
Oh, God, really?
Well, they heard noises and saw the windows steamed up and thought that it might be,
What?
indecent.
Well, it isn't indecent.
There's nothing sexual going on. I mean, for one thing, there isn't room. Well, there is, Phoebe. It's surprisingly spacious. Those seats can flip down. You've almost got a queen-size bed in the back.
I mean, it wouldn't work with this configuration of people anyway, but...
Well, no, I mean, it doesn't matter.
What are you doing in here, then?
Just sitting in a car, officer.
Right, and?
And is that a crime or something?
All right, Mel. We know it isn't a crime.
So you're just sitting in a car?
We've set up a political party.
Duncan, don't.
Right, I don't see the connection.
We're protesting.
Mel?
As is our democratic right. As the banner on the bonnet shows.
You're protesting against the Twilight films?
No.
So, yes, that explains the Twilight gag. Very understated, your mate Nick Mohammed, isn't he?
Sorry,
If you drop your tin leg. Well, you shouldn't be phoning other people while I'm talking to you.
It's got my timer on to see how...
It's got so little commitment,
me to
folks.
death, that did. Sorry. Yeah, really. Do you know what? I wouldn't have recognised him. I wouldn't have recognised his voice.
Right.
If I hadn't known it was him, I would never have guessed him in a million years. I'm really normally quite good at guessing voices of people, but yeah, I mean, I think the whole cast are understated, aren't they? I mean, it's easy to play it big, isn't it? We were talking about this a couple of episodes ago. I've got to mention Johnny Sweet, who I'm also a huge fan of as well, who plays Jared. He's Nottingham lad, actually, so he's a Midlander, I suppose.
Oh, he's all right then.
He's all right.
Unless you live in Derby, where you and I met, darling.
Yeah, and then if you live from Nottingham, then particularly if you're a Forest fan.
I used to call it the N word before saying Nottingham. Probably get into trouble over that. But yes, a certain amount of local rivalry. But anyway, what I was going to say, sorry, did you have a point you wanted to raise about Mr. Sweet? Because I had a thought.
No, I was just going to say he's another one who writes and writes and writes. He's done some great stuff. I mean, he did, I don't know if you came across it, he did a thing called Hard to Tell, which starred Vicky Pepperdine, amongst others.
All right.
Who played his mother, actually. And he went on to TV. I think it was called Together when it was on TV. He just did one series, 2 series on radio, 1 series. And he's also written for Simon Bird and Joe Thomas, who were from The Inbetweeners. Right. And they did Chickens together, which was a set in World War II about 3 conscientious objectors who didn't want to go to war and were treated quite badly by the local women because they were seen as cowards because they didn't want to go to war. So, like, again, he's got another, there's a breadth there in the writing and the acting and the experience that he's got for basically a young lad. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. What I was going to say was, and I don't know if it's coincidence or whether it is all part of this very bright elite mindset, but when I listened a second time, and we generally try and listen to or watch, if we're doing TV, obviously, a second time and be a bit more analytical. We pick as much up as on the fly the first time as we can. Second time, I shut my computer, having been listening online, so you can either listen obviously via the app, the BBC, and we should say obviously it's a BBC production, BBC Radio 4 originally, now on 4 Extra, but it made me think some of the sort of digging in with the interplay, because it's very wordy. I mean, if you don't like words, you probably won't like this show, but I think we all like words. But I mean, that sounds a daft thing to say about a radio show, but it is particularly dense, isn't it? There's a few sound effects. We've heard 1 or 2, the walkie-talkie for the policeman, a bit of boot action, which we'll hear in clip number 3, but essentially it's very densely written, and obviously intentionally so, but I thought this sounds like a legal argument sometimes. And then I remembered that I'd looked up Mr. Sweet, Johnny Sweet, who plays Jared, and his wiki entry talks about he nearly had a legal profession, nearly followed the law, and he's another Oxbridge brain box. And it was only because he got a taste of, I think, footlights, if I remember correctly, that he decided on a much riskier career. I don't know what the parents thought, but so there's something. Do you know what I'm getting at? A sort of legal argument that you're splitting hairs, which we can all do to varying degrees.
Yeah, I mean, because he's the character that he plays, he's a real pedant anyway, isn't he? He's like, it has to be, everything has to be exact and has to be precise and has to be, exactly what it is. He's like the parent of the group, I thought.
Yes. And he's also he's trying to calm things down in front of the police officer, isn't he?
Exactly, yeah. He's to make it all go smoothly or make it all go away, depending on what he wants to achieve. But the one thing I did, you're right, and the words, and the thing that struck me about it, listening to it again with a critical mind, was how sharp it is in terms of the interaction between the characters. I mean, they are. You can't get a credit card in between them, can you? They are so precise. There's nobody over talking anybody else. There's nobody stumbling over their lines, and it is so incredibly sharp and accurate. And to me, I mean, and that's a compliment. It doesn't ruin the experience for me. It's only when you notice it you think, wow, they are, because it sounds like a conversation, because people are just going back and forth with the conversation. A lot of dialogue, isn't it, though? But you're right. I mean, to me, I like that with radio.
Yeah, it's strange because it's the only show we've slabbed where I've really thought it's words to this extent. But obviously, radio is, you're going to get a lot of words, whatever. But I think it needs your full attention though to really enjoy all the little twists and turns. And they're absolutely brilliant. I mean, it comes back to Mr. Basden's script. Brilliant at throwing stuff away early on that you don't realise is going to be absolutely vital later on. And it comes back as a classic comedy callback. And these aren't just, lame second-rate stand-up callbacks. These are really sharp, a twist of the knife type callbacks. Just amazing. Of which, that's why I had to mention the Twilight thing.
I mean, the other thing as well is that he's not afraid of a gag.
No.
They'll gag it up, won't they? I mean,
it's not too bright for a good old-fashioned, very honest-to-goodness gag. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah,
sort of
and it's all contextually. I found that the lines, even if they weren't gags, if they were just funny lines, but the lines suited the characters as well. There's the one that made me laugh out loud, which I think is a wonderful moment. Was I think Phoebe talking to Duncan, and she says, "Well, Duncan," she said, you can lead a horse to water, and as quick as a flash he just says, "Can you?" like he's never heard that phrase before. And
it can be very daft in a lovely way.
So and you can imagine him thinking, leading a horse, like really actually leading an actual horse to actual water. Rather than in a metaphorical. Can you? He says.
There's a couple of other diversions. I mean, there's one about, is it Jared that says he's got a sixth sense, and then the question arises, well, how do you know you've got a sixth sense? And someone pipes up, is it Duncan or Simon says, you must have a seventh sense to know you've got a sixth sense. Yeah. And then they get onto a discussion about a plainclothes army. I mean, it's just absolutely bonkers. Sorry,
if all wars were fought in the nude, and then what I love is, and a lot of these distractions, these asides, these, as you call these, and that's exactly the word I'd written in my notes, diversions, become plot points in as much as they then start to consider them, and they do this in other episodes as well, but they then start to consider them as part of their manifesto. Are these so? Should they start to go down the route of should armies fight wars naked? Would that be advantageous?
Is that a thing?
And then sometimes they're not their dead ends, like the classic diversion in this episode. I think was just before the policeman comes along, and they're talking about Jared getting out of the car, and he gets back in the car, and mid sentence, I think it's Katie Wicks says, "Are those your nipples?"
Yeah, it's come from nowhere. So she says, "You've got very big nipples. Can you just go a bit side on?"
It's cold out there. It's like, and then later on he'll say, "I'm not getting out. My nipples have only just come down."
Exactly.
So it's structured so beautifully, isn't it? It's just. I don't know. These are all the reasons why I think it's just fabulous bit of writing and a fabulous bit of performing as well.
It feels like, although there's all this rambling, at the end of the show, you feel not a single word is wasted. And that's brilliant. I mean, I don't know how they do that, but they do.
But it's not in a, and I don't want to ruin anything from the next clip, but it's not in a highbrow way either, is it? There's plenty of middle and lowbrow stuff in there as well. For you to have a laugh at. Which one of the examples I was going to mention, I think might come up in the next clip, so I won't ruin that one.
Right. Well, you say you were looking at me, again, looking at Skype, me looking at you, looking at me. So you're obviously thinking of me when you're thinking of down market gags. So let's move swiftly on to crip. That's a bit cryptic. That's a cryptic clue that it's clip 3. Clippity clop. So what am I going to say about this? Sorry, I've lost the page where I make a few scribbles. It would help if I opened the right app. Yes. So yes, this is trombone related. For some reason, Jared thinks it will help the protest.
How often do you get to say that in a
Exactly.
This next clip is trombone related.
So in clip number 3, it is trombone related, and he's putting the trombone back in the boot, having accidentally caught someone with the slide. If you can think what a trombone looks like, it's like one of those party things you get in a cracker, but with a brass thing that if it hit you in a certain nether region as a bloke, or maybe even as a woman, it would hurt somewhat. So here is clip number 3.
I told you not to use the trombone, Jared.
For different reasons, though, Phoebe.
Well, I still said it, though, didn't I?
Yeah, you were right by accident. I'll give you that. Well, right, lock the doors.
What did you say, Simon?
I didn't really say anything. He's not happy about getting the brass section in his balls, put it that way.
Did you tell him about the protest?
Not so much, no.
Oh, Simon!
Well, not really.
He doesn't look very happy.
No, this is my point, Mel.
Oh, what's he doing? What does that gesture mean?
I think it means that he'd like to have a word with me, Phoebe.
Well, just stay here, I would, Jared.
How strong is this car, Mel?
What, I mean, in what sense?
In case he attacks.
Well, it's a 2CV. It's not a panic room, Duncan. He's backing
Oh,
off.
good.
Yeah, that's right, fella. Jog on. Off your trot, mate.
He can't hear you, Jared.
I know, Duncan. That's why I'm saying it.
And that was the bit I was on about when he had the brass section.
Oh, you can't beat a good B and B joke, as it were.
I don't know where it was in this particular scene, but there was a bit of Duncan trying to helpfully said that he knew what it felt like because he'd ridden a camel once.
And it turned out it was in Kent.
One of the girls said, "Did you hurt your ghoulies?" And he said, "It did the way I did it," which I thought again was a classic bit of comedy. Though you could hear that in Morecambe and Wise,
didn't you? Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was like that was kind of classic comedy. I thought that.
I thought quite literally he'd got the ump. The way he was sitting. But it was the idea of a camel in Kent as well, my chosen county of residence.
It's just, again, you kind of think that is something that Duncan would say in the same way that Jared is so conceited that he thought a trombone was just, what was it, a combination of blowing and sliding. It isn't really musical.
It doesn't count as a musical.
It's more of a machine. A combination. And she said, "What are you going to play?" And he went, "Oh, I'm just, just do some slides of slide back to me." Love it. Like, why would you bring a trombone to a protest in the first place? But there you are.
Genius. And we should credit the, if we're talking genius, it's like George Martin was the 5th Beatle, the producer. Producer of this is Julia Mackenzie. She must be pretty sharp to produce something this good.
Yeah.
So credit to her as well. Are we at the star rating end of the show by any chance?
Yeah, before I do, can I have a quick question? Because I know that this did 2 series on radio, 2 series in the Christmas special, which they just had at Christmas just gone. Never made TV. Should it have done, do you think?
Well, as discussed earlier, of course, we couldn't have had the car gag in the same way. I don't know. See, I'm such a radio fan. Keen listeners to the Slab will probably analyse. I haven't done the numbers, but you've threatened to get some kind of spreadsheet together with the scores. I think we should analyse how much I suggest radio rather than TV. So I love me audio, unashamedly. And I don't assume... for instance, we were talking about Dead Ringers last week, which is up for an award, incidentally, and one of the voice artists retweeted or liked one of our tweets. So there's a thing. But I think when that went to TV, for me it was less of a show because Impressionism, they had to spend, it's a bit like the Fast Show character who spent 4 hours in makeup and then went, "Rrr." Do you remember the John Thompson character? I'm the evil one. So on radio, you don't have to spend 4 hours in makeup. No offence to wonderful, talented makeup artists and designers.
But all of that aside and everything, though, as a viewer or a lover of comedy, or I mean, would you say? I'm not sure I would.
I can't imagine it would. I don't think it could match the intensity. I think something would go wrong in the transfer.
Yeah.
I'd still watch it,
I think I can't see TV just saying, like, you can imagine a TV producer going and so what? They just sit in the shed for half an hour.
Well, it's a bit
we
like,
can't do that.
You mentioned Count Arthur Strong. Sorry, I'm straying off again, but it's sort of relevant. I don't think that, because TV, it seemed to me someone had said, "Oh, we need a gimmick. Now we've moved a radio show to TV. We need an additional thing." No, you don't. The genius of Count Arthur Strong is in the wordplay.
Although to me, with Count Arthur Strong, which we should slab one of the weeks.
We should.
You got 2 for the price of 1 with that. I think they did change it, but I think what came out was still a good product on TV. But it wasn't the radio series.
Well, we'll have to slab it. I'm going to bite my tongue for now because time's running out on us.
Okay.
So what are you going to give it? I have a certain hunch, but is it going to be a big, significant number?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 5.
Give it 5.
A 5. I was going to give it a 5. I'm not going to muck about. I'm not going to build it up. I'm going to give it a 5. It is just a cracker. I just think it is just beautiful. If it were a sculpture, it would be David. It is just, but with the
right,
but with the arms,
Michelangelo or by my mate Terry down the road.
It would be David, but with the arms and bigger tackle.
And a trombone to the okay.
Trombone by his side. It is perfect. It's a 5 for me.
Now I've got a dilemma here because it would be a 5, but you know how pernickety I can be.
Yeah,
there was a tiny bit, notwithstanding anything we've said earlier, but there was a tiny bit of popping on the mic, and also when I started, admittedly, it's on. I nearly said iPlayer. Wash out my mouth as a sometime BBC worker. It's BBC Sounds we have to push now, but it started with. It came straight in on applause, hard, and music, and I thought, oh, this is one of those automatic iPlayer / BBC Sounds things where it's just cut it in from the end of the previous show just so it didn't miss the start. And I think there's no excuse for starting such a fine show on a hard cut, which should be sensitive to the programme material. So
I don't think that is on the programme. I think that is on the because I've actually got it here, and it doesn't. It starts with the guitar riff.
Yeah. Well, that should have been transferred. So we could say presentationally, it's not quite there.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to give it. I am, but
go on. What are you going to give it?
So I'm going to give it 4.5. Yeah, sorry, a bit of mic popping and presentationally, just slightly below par, but only
I think
slightly.
that's the highest we've ever given. That's a 9.5.
It is. This is strictly week 10, isn't it? When we're getting close to the finals. Fortunately, we're not stopping this show anytime soon. That we know of. That's not bad,
right?
Is it? And I think it's the highest or joint highest I've given something. Don't know.
Right. I'm halfway through the figuring out what we've given everything. So
halfway through.
I'll stick it up on our Facebook page or something like that. So when we've got it all sorted. Right. Do you want to know what your homework is?
I do. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to struggle to compete with Party, but hey, let's have a try.
Okay, it's one of those where if you blinked, you might have missed it. It's a pilot at the moment. That's all that's been broadcast. It was broadcast on BBC Two.
Mm-hmm.
It starred Lee Mack, Ellie White, Samantha Spiro, Clive Russell, Sarah Hoare, Neil Fitzmaurice, Geoffrey McGivern, and Patrick Bellardi. You'll know a lot of the faces in there. It's written by David Crowe and Oliver Maltman, who I'm not familiar with their work. It was called Semi-Detached. And the reason that it caught my attention was that it was described as a real-time sitcom. So there's no bopping backwards and forwards, this happened earlier, or this and 3 minutes later this happened. It's actually the whole thing. It's like one big scene.
Right.
A real-time... now, I don't know if that's why they've only done the pilot, and they've actually broadcast the pilot, In fact, I don't really know an awful lot about it other than that. And that's it. That's our homework for next week.
I know what went wrong. Joan Armour Trading was executive producer, and she said, "Drop the pilot," and they did. Sadly. Oh, you're too kind. Right, well, no, I shall look forward to that. Anything with Lee Mackin, I would give the time of day. And also this conceit of the real time nature of it. That sounds very interesting. Look forward to that. We'll go into details of how you can find it and all of that next time, I guess.
Yeah, as always with all of these, by the way, if you're listening to any of the back catalogue or anything like that, on the audio, on Spreaker and on YouTube, there's a little blurb. If you click the link below whatever you're listening to, and it'll give you all of the stuff and links to where you can find stuff, or if it isn't actually available on broadcast websites where you can buy them as well, DVD and stuff like that as well. So we're trying to help you out with all that sort of stuff.
Lovely.
With the info. All right.
Great. So a quick mention for social medias. We are at Comedy Slab. No surprises there on Twitter and Facebook. We'd love you to follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. That'd be fab. You kind of very slyly, and I thought very efficiently, got in a mention for some of the platforms we're on. So I don't think we need to major on that, really.
No, if you want to catch up with the back catalogue, it's easy. Just sort of scroll down, and they're all there in chronological order. So couldn't be easier, really.
Yes, in Technicolor.
For you to download and listen to, yeah.
Quick plug, if I may, for my own solo production, which is the London podcast. After a bit of a hiatus towards the end of the year and Christmas shenanigans and trying to move home and all sorts of stuff and nonsense, there's a greatest hits from 2018 I've just put up, and then there's a very interesting show about money to come soon, something we all have an interest in, literally and otherwise. So you'll find that and me presenting and producing the London podcast at, quite simply, londonpodcast.net, where you can subscribe via RSS, iTunes, Android, and probably, I don't know, Hoover and Hotpoint as well.
And then I have to say, I know people think I'm biased, but it plays a special part in the Comedy Slab podcast, actually, because the reason that Adrian and I got together to do a podcast at all was because I heard your London podcast. I mean, I know we worked together in radio before that, but I saw and heard your London podcast where you interview yourself.
Which sounds madder than perhaps it is.
It's awesome. And I was so impressed with it that I got in touch with him and said, I've got to tell you, I've just seen that. I thought you were brilliant. And the rest, as they say, is geography.
Don't keep changing the subject.
So don't you mean history, so don't change the subject. That's it for another Comedy Slab podcast. Thank you very much for being with us. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you've got any suggestions of anything we can slab in the future, then please suggest away. We're not too proud to have suggestions slung our way, are we? Because that would give an increasing dynamic where neither of us had chosen it, really. So that'd be quite interesting as well.
Yeah. As it is, we're off to what I insist on calling the Summer House to form our own political party, me and Shane, the Comedy Slab Party.
I'll be borrowing his camel from Kent and riding it around the Midlands.
And I'll be driving the 2CV to get us there. Thanks for listening. Take care. Till next time.